Okay, all right. And I have a scripted bio for you too that I'm going to read. Do you want one down from the top? What did you do last night? Somewhere interesting?
Last night, I went to this party. After party,
Sorry. Loaded. I have not. Oh yeah? All up island? You're had a chance to go down? You get to stay longer or you have to move on?
I have to get back to the grind.
Back to Oregon.
Your security, making sure we get back. We need that. You gotta keep contained.
I look like I could really do damage, right?
Good?
Yes.
Are you going to use that mic too now?
No. I think I should use that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you guys good with the handhelds? Okay, great. They should be on. There are no switches or anything, so.
Should we wait till like 9:55? Give some people, because I know everyone's at that popular movie, guys. 10.
Mr. Competition,
Yeah.
How are you? Good morning. Look nice and fresh.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Now, once you start, we'll hit 4/10 running. So this is. Yeah, we've had. It's. I didn't do the signage well for here. It's my bad. We have it.
My body's so sore from the water skiing. No, the last time I did it, I was like 9 years old.
Have you done events together before?
Cincinnati. Yeah.
With Trump in Cincinnati last week?
You were with Trump in Cincinnati?
No, wasn't he just in Cincinnati or something?
He's all over the place. Tweeting from all corners of the country. Hey, how you doing? Good. Thank you. It's a little dusty out here, but
Hey, when we go back to DC, we're gonna have to check out the restaurant. We're all a bunch of DC.
Distracting.
Good.
I'm just going to welcome people. Okay, and then I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I'm just going to.
just getting this party started. We probably waited a little bit. Filled up.
Hello. Good morning. Welcome to the 2019 Martha's Vineyard Book Festival. This is our fourth hall. I'm sorry about the confusion on CCC Hall. I think too many people know what's in my head, but it's really the Chilmar Community Center Hall, and I thought everyone knows that. Sorry. I'm delighted to have Chef Onwuachi here along with Jessica Harris. I consider them both personal friends, and when we were thinking about planning the festival, I had an event, a fundraiser for Martha's Table in DC Central Kitchen in DC, and Chef Onwuachi was our chef for the evening at his wonderful restaurant, Kith and Kin. And then I saw he had that book, and I was like, we need to have him here. And then who would be a good interviewer? And of course, the fabulous James Beard Award-winning, both of them, Jessica Harris and Chef Onwuachi. So it is a great team. I am not the hall manager. I usurped just this minute to welcome you all. So forgive me, my name is Sue Ellen Lazarus. I'm the director of the festival. And I wanted to, thank you. One of the things I wanted to mention is the way we are able to keep this festival free is we have sponsorships. So we are incredibly grateful to our sponsors who make substantial contributions to underwrite the cost of this. So you see some people walking around with VIP sponsors. It's a great opportunity for you too. You get good parking and front row seating. And also, we have many corporate sponsors. Most importantly, we have the Vineyard Gazette, who does that beautiful supplement for us. And I want to introduce Julia Wells, who's the editor of the Gazette, who's there in the back row. and thank her. Because how lucky are we to have her and have that newspaper. And then we get grants from Mass Cultural Council, Martha's Vineyard Bank, Cape Cod 5, and all sorts of people come together, island businesses, to make this possible. So we encourage you to go see our sponsors, to buy books at Bunch of Grapes, because they too make this all happen. And it is not, unless you buy the books, they don't come back. And unless you buy the books, the authors aren't supported. So please buy a hard copy of the book. And with that, I wish you a wonderful festival. I hope I see you today at 4:30, as well as at 11 o'clock, that you stay throughout the day. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, and let me reiterate a welcome to this day. We have with us, as you know, an important addition to our culinary interests this morning, and he will be interviewed by Jessica, a conversation with Jessica Harris this morning. Jessica is the author of 12 cookbooks documenting the foods and foodways of the African diaspora. In 2019, she was included in the Cookbook Hall of Fame by the James Beard Association. After their conversation this morning, we would invite you to the microphones. You can step right up to the microphones if you have a question. We'll have about 10 minutes for questions afterward. So if you would like to ask a question, you please do so at the end. And then following the questions, we will meet over at the signing tent, where you can pick up a hard copy of Kwame's book at the bookseller's tent, and then take it to the signing table, where he will sign it for you personally. Without further ado, let's welcome Jessica and Kwame. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am enough of a school teacher, I only retired a year or so ago, to say, those of you in the back, move forward. Okay, so it said reserve, but please feel free to move up, occupy space in the front. And school teachers' rules say that if there are two people in the class, one will be in the back on that side, one will be in the back on that side. So come forward. This is going to be, we've decided, an intimate conversation more than a Q&A. But let me begin by telling you something about this extraordinary young man. Kwame Onwuachi is the James Beard Award-winning executive chef of Kith and Kin, and the owner of Philly Wing Fry. It's a franchise in Washington, D.C. Named one of, go ahead, shout out for D.C. Okay. Named one of Food and Wine's best new chefs, he is a former Top Chef contestant and a 30 under 30 honoree by both Zagat and Forbes. Kwame was born on Long Island, raised in New York City, Nigeria, and Louisiana. He trained at the Culinary Institute of America and opened 5 restaurants before turning 30. Now, before I get to Kwame, I want to add some stuff to that bio, which is the one that I was sent earlier, because he's had an extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary spring. So, spring and early summer. May was marked by Kwame's winning the James Beard Rising Star Chef of the Year for 2019. And then, in case that wasn't enough, on the same day, which would be the 16th of July, it was announced that Notes from a Young Black Chef is going to be a major film produced by A24 with who in the starring role?
Lakeith Stanfield is
Louder,
playing.
Please.
Somebody turn my mic up.
There you go.
Lakeith Stanfield. He was in Get Out. I don't know if you all are familiar with that movie, but
so that's not too shabby. And on the same day, because that wasn't enough good news, the New York Times published an article that a lot of people think may be a game changer, and we'll talk about that later, called 16 Black Chefs Changing Food in America. And Kwame was one of those 16.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so that's a lot of success and praise. And you're looking at a very young man. And so there's some who might ask, why would a 28-year-old decide to write a memoir?
It's a great question. I think people ask me that every single day.
Didn't say it was original.
They ask me that, and why is my name Kwame if I'm Nigerian? Those are the two things I get every day. But I was approached to write a memoir. I used to give speeches on just my life story. You know, I grew up in the Bronx, New York, and there's a lot of people that needed some inspiration, that looked like them, that was young enough to have some sort of relation. And I gave one in a food conference called Bitten in New York City. And when I got off stage, there was a literary agent in the crowd, and she said, you need to make this into a book, and let's make it happen.
All right. And obviously that person is still your agent, and it has
Yes,
happened.
she is. I don't think she's going to let me go for a while.
Okay, I'm going to shill for the book now. Here, buy it. That's all I'm going to say. We're not going to do a deep dive into the book because you need to read it. It is beautifully done. You need to take the journey. But just to give us a soupçon, if you will, of the story.
Yeah, so it follows my life path from the Bronx. I was born and raised in New York. My mom was a single mom who had an apartment, one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, and it was me, my sister, and her. And she was an accountant, and she wanted to figure out a way to spend time with us while still raising us, because babysitters were raising us. So she thought of opening a catering company in the house, and me and my sister became her first two employees. So I was 5, my sister was 10, definitely against the law, but we bonded, and that's really where I got my passion for cooking. Fast forward 5 years later, I was 10 years old now, lived a long life, and comparatively speaking,
Geriatric.
Third of my life. And I was veering off on the wrong path, getting into trouble, which is really easy to do when you grow up in the Bronx. So my mother didn't want to see me in a jail cell or a body bag, so she told me I was going to visit my grandfather for 2 weeks in Nigeria. But I've quickly found out those 2 weeks was not the end of my trip. She left me there for a long period of time in order to learn respect and to appreciate what I had here in America. And I came back with a newfound appreciation for life and went to school, went to college, ended up either dropping out or getting kicked out. You can look at it both ways, And the only thing I knew how to do was cook, and that's the only thing I really enjoyed doing. I didn't want to do it growing up. I just did it to help my mom out. And even when I got out of school, it was like, all right, I got to get a job. How can I get a job tomorrow? So I start cooking. Okay. And then I really, really get into it. And there's a lot. I don't want to give it all away. I know we're going to talk some more about it, but it follows that whole trajectory. And then working in fine dining as pretty much the only person of color in the restaurant. So yeah, that's the book.
Well, that's the book, sort of. But fine dining. And fine dining, as you say, as a young black chef. Black chefs, as we said earlier, have been in the forefront of the food news. But what actually happens in terms of the restaurant? And before we even get there, what took you specifically into the fine dining restaurant end?
So I got into fine dining because I would go on dates and I would just look up the best restaurant in New York, and then I would try to just impress a girl and take them there.
Okay.
And I would just be bravely eating things like, you don't know what uni is? And I'm just like looking it up on my phone, and like eating it. But I got intrigued by it by there, and there was a list that was out, 100 best restaurant lists, and I would look up the ones that were like in New York City and take them there. And then I went to culinary school.
What took you to culinary school then?
I really just wanted to go. So I started a catering company in New York City that I sold candy on the subway to fund. And I would hit this glass ceiling because I only taught myself how to cook and watch my mom. And I always wanted to go to the CIA. And now
that would be the culinary.
Yeah, not the. I know I live in D.C., but it's not the CIA. But so now I had the means to go to school, put myself through school, and I fell in love with fine dining by learning about it at school. We had to go on an externship, or it's a fancy word for internship, and I chose Per Se to go to.
Okay, so tell us, just for those who don't know, brief paragraph, not paragraph, parentheses on Per Se. Tell us what that is.
So Per Se, I would say 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I was at that restaurant, was the best restaurant in America. It's by Thomas Keller. He has a restaurant, a California outpost called the French Laundry, and he opened up Per Se about 15 years ago now.
Okay.
It's a 3 Michelin star restaurant. It's like a really, really intense kitchen to work in.
One of the very few in the world that is 3 Michelin star chefs. But now, in a kitchen, to my understanding, and I am not a chef, the professional kitchen is based on something that Escoffier came up with, which was called the brigade system, a brigade. Tell us a little bit about that, because that was going to have influence on the rest of your trajectory.
Definitely. So the French brigade system is pretty much based off the military and how they operate. So, you know, you have your, I don't know all the branches of the military, I'm not going to act like I do, but you have, you know, your commis, which is your people that are starting out. Even lower than that are the stagiaires, people that are just pretty much working there for free just to learn. Then you have your commis, which are like glorified prep cooks. And then you have chef de parties, which is a line cook, sous chef, chef de cuisine, executive chef. Mm-hmm. And part of the brigade system is everyone is split up into different areas of the kitchen. So there's entremet, which is like the only cook vegetables. Poissonné, only cook fish. You know, your roast cooks your meat dishes. Garmager is the cold kitchen. Fromagier does the cheeses. And it all comes together like an assembly line to the plate at the end.
Okay, now, the late Anthony Bourdain called that brigade a pirate band because there is that kind of camaraderie, that kind of us against the world thing that goes on. What happened as a young black chef with that pirate band?
Well, the thing is, you know, you can hide a lot in the quote-unquote like natural hazing. You can hide, you know, racism, sexism within that. So some people got it worse than others, you know, me included. And there were, you know, it was racism masked behind, this is just the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Examples?
Being called lazy and ignorant, even though I'm there the same amount of time as everyone else. Literally being told, like, black people don't even eat at this restaurant, so, like, you need to chill out, you know, told that they don't want me here, you know, and this is when I'm not even getting paid to be there. So it's like, it's very demeaning for one, but two, it sucks at the time because you just want to cook. You're like, what does my skin color have to do with how fast I can chop an onion, you know? So it's tough, you know, and then you add on not even getting paid. It makes you want to give up. And I think that's one of the reasons why there aren't a lot of black chefs today in fine dining, is because a lot of people are like, all right, I don't have to deal with this.
Well, and you're not getting paid. So that's another factor.
They changed the law now, so hopefully.
You've got to get paid.
Got to get paid.
But now, you're coming out of culinary school to do that. Do you feel that culinary school prepared you for that in any way, or do you feel it should? And if it didn't prepare you, how would you change things?
I don't know if there's a way to really prepare for that. It's just something that happens, and hopefully the more we talk about it, the more there will be change. And the more people of color that are doing great things in the culinary industry, the more things will change. You know, culinary school teaches you the basics, but they don't teach you how to deal with a bigot. You know, they can't really prepare you for that. You know, hopefully most people don't have to go through that, but sometimes you do.
Okay, but even with that, do you see perhaps a different kind of culinary school? How would you envision a culinary school that would address people of color and the foods of peoples of color? What would your culinary school look like?
I think, you know, I think the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America, does a really good job at training up and coming cooks. I think a Cuisines of Africa would be really cool, just to show different a different style of cooking, you know, like, because we learn about all different types of cuisine, and we don't go out to cook that food, but we have that in our repertoire, and you can apply those, the rudiments of all these different cultures in any cuisine that you're cooking. And it would be really cool to see the cuisines of Africa, because, you know, West African food is arguably what really inspired American cuisine
you're preaching
today.
to the choir here.
So,
Yeah, you know. But I mean, my question would also be, what extent would you do? I mean, I know the CIA's curriculum, they do a course called International Cuisine. I think they may do 1 or 2 West African dishes now. How do you see that happening? How do you see that developing? What would you add to it? And what would some of the dishes you would want to put there?
It's funny you asked me that, because I'm developing a course for the CIA.
Okay.
Cuisines of Africa for summer 2020 will be added to the curriculum.
About time.
I know, right? Yeah. So I'm going there to do the first preliminary class in October. I am teaching their advanced cooking class, kind of like a Nigerian festival. So we would always have like these, whenever someone like passed away or there was a wedding, there would always be like jollof rice on the table, or moi moi, or suya, or...
Okay,
you know.
wait, slow down. Because now you are talking to folks who need definitions. So, jollof rice.
So jollof
and
rice
you know I've got a story about that.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
jollof rice.
Jollof rice is like, you know, the grandfather of jambalaya in a sense, you know. So it is, you make a sofrito, or red stew, or din din is what we call it. And you take like peppers and tomatoes and onions and garlic and ginger, and you puree that so it's like pretty watery, and then you add oil to it and reduce it down in the oil so it caramelizes as it turns into a paste, and then you add your rice. But that's the base of a lot of cooking in West Africa, because you'll make stew from that red sauce. So I'll be teaching them how to make a couple dishes, and then I'll be doing a class for their food studies program on how West Africa pretty much birthed American cuisine as we know it.
Okay. That's one dish. And by the way, do you know why it's called jollof rice?
Why?
Do you know why it's called jollof rice?
Why?
Do you know the Jollof Empire?
In what country was that?
The Jollof Empire was in Senegal.
Senegal.
It was in Senegal in the 16th century. The Jolofs were essentially the ancestors of the Wolofs. As the rice moved, and Senegal is actually has a rice growing area in the south. As the rice moved, as the rice dishes moved, the rice that was the national dish of Senegal, which is called chebujen, which I'm sure you've tasted, moves to Ghana and then down to Nigeria, and it changes, it inflects differently, but it keeps the name of the empire that spawned it, Jollof rice. So it's not Nigerian, it's not Ghanaian, it's Senegalese at its origin. Okay? So that's a little bit about food history. But what about moi moi? You mentioned 3 different dishes. So tell us a little bit about moi moi.
So moi moi is black-eyed peas. You take the skins off of them, and then you puree them and add palm oil, onions, ginger, and chilies. And then you can wrap it in banana leaves and steam it. So it's similar to panisse. Yeah, and it's delicious. It's really good. So that's pretty much that.
And those black-eyed peas, that whole family of legume, the Vigna species, are native to the African continent. So when you're getting those black-eyed peas, where you're getting those sea island field peas, where you're getting all of those beans are native to the African continent. And suya.
So suya is kind of like West African barbecue. So it's grilled meats over an open fire. It's seasoned intensely with the suya spice. So it's ground nut powder, which is like a native peanut. There is like paprika, ginger, garlic, alligator pepper, and usually like dehydrated beef or Maggi cubes, which is like a bouillon cube. And then you season the meat with that. and then you grill it over the fire and you serve it with tomatoes and onions. It's extremely spicy. It's one of my favorite things.
Reputed to be very good for hangovers.
It is.
There you go. I know people sort of say suya. Oh yeah, hangover food, but very good. Okay. The movie of the book. Are you happy with the casting, and who else would you cast?
I think it should have been a more handsome person playing me.
Well, there you go. All right.
Honestly, it's kind of disrespectful, but I think he'll do a good job.
Okay. Who would you cast as your grandfather?
It's John Chidley.
Okay.
I think he would do well.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I would cast Alfre Woodard as my mother.
All right. All right. So hopefully somebody's listening.
And Beyonce is my fiance.
Well, I'm sure your fiance is thrilled.
They look alike, so it's all good.
There you go. All right. All right. Right now you are clearly in the catbird seat. But it was not always thus. I'm going to say two words. Shaw Bijou. Explain from today's perspective, first of all, what those two words refer to, what that means, and where you might have gone now, differently, if any.
So the Shaw Bijou, the Shaw is a district in Washington, D.C., and Bijou is jewel in French. My mother's name is Jewel, so I wanted to name my first restaurant after her. It's kind of like a double entendre, Jewel of the Shaw. And it was this old 200-year-old Italianate row house that we turned into a restaurant. So we completely restructured it, and it was an incredibly grueling process, turning a residential property into a commercial. Not only because of the permits that are needed, but changing pipes from 2 inches to 4 inches to be able to facilitate the water suppression system. It's a lot of work, but I loved every moment of it. It was a story of my life on a plate. It was a tasting menu restaurant. It was about 18 courses, and you would start at the bar, you would sit down, they would ask you what your favorite drink is, and that was really your first course, accompanied by a small dish. And then we built a staircase that went directly into the kitchen, and you had your second course there. And then you made your way to the dining room. Halfway through, you're back in the kitchen. So it was a very interactive experience that only lasted 3 months.
Why?
My partners. Businesses close because you run out of money. And I was really young and wasn't really asking the right questions going into it. And they just didn't have enough working capital to keep it going.
Okay. Now, my understanding was that there might have also been a critic involved. And I want to talk about the role of the critic, restaurant critics. What do you think about restaurant critics?
Restaurant critics are, I think criticism is necessary to propel. Hopefully it's more constructive than anything. But I think the average restaurant critic doesn't really have a well-versed palate. A lot of them are very, they're stuck in whatever town they're in. Maybe they'll vacation in Europe every now and then, but to have the full gamut and understand. I'll tell you this story. I went out to eat with a food critic recently, right? And he's reviewing Vietnamese cuisine, and I've been to Vietnam a couple times, and we're eating it, and I'm like, this is not it. Like, this isn't it. Whatever this is not it. This is not good. And he's like, well, this dish is really good. I'm like, have you been to Vietnam? He's like, no. I was like, then how are you writing all these stories on Vietnamese food if this is what you're basing you're setting your bar at? And he's like, yeah, you're right. He went on to write the article, and it was a glowing review for this Vietnamese restaurant.
That you found to be less than?
It was not it. It was not good at all.
Okay.
And it just wasn't, it didn't even depict they weren't using the right ingredients. They were calling like beef and lalut leaves, but they were using grape leaves. Like, it was just things that they couldn't even source, but they were still trying to call it what it wasn't. And you need to go to the source to be able to be an authority on it. And that's just a small snapshot. So I think, certain critics, I don't know all critics, but from the experiences that I've had, they're not as well versed as they seem. They can write really well, but I think to be a critic, you should at least have to work at a restaurant for 10 years at the very least to know what it's like, because you can't really give an opinion on something if you haven't really gone through it. And if you're going to be writing on a certain type of cuisine, you have to really know about it.
Okay. And
another thing,
Okay, go ahead. And another thing. You probably didn't know I was a restaurant critic for the Village Voice for 6 years.
I knew that.
Okay. But I wasn't a critic, I was a reviewer, and I think there's a distinction to be made between critics who actually have that matrix and have that background and know whereof they speak, and reviewers who are simply doing a review of the place as it is perceived by them. And I think that goes across the board, not just for restaurants, but I was also a theater critic, but I have a doctorate in theater, so I could be a theater critic, but I had to be a restaurant reviewer. That said, though, do you think that the lack of African American restaurant critics or reviewers and other people of color have an effect on the success or failure of fine dining African American restaurants?
Yeah, definitely. There's just not that sense of familiarity, and in order to change what's going on, we need more representation in that sector.
Okay, so, how do you do that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't review restaurants, but I think for me, it starts at the top. It starts with editors hiring more people of color. I mean, I think that's where it starts. Okay. And then more people writing about people of color, so they feel more inclined or more confident to actually open restaurants and not get totally annihilated in the press.
Okay. And we don't have time to go into banks and loans and things of that sort, but yeah, okay. I often hear African American chefs speak of, large quotation marks, elevating black food. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think it means? And do you think it's necessary?
I think it's just another genre of cuisine. You can have, it's just like any other ethnicity. Like you can have your Chinese food that you can just go, it's no frills, or you can have a place where they're sourcing every single ingredient and cooking things at a perfect technique, and that's like elevated Chinese food. So I think for the people that want to do that, that's fine. It's not necessary. I mean, our food is good just the way it is, but if they want to use that as they have the creative license to do what they want to do, and that's the beauty of cooking.
Okay, so not always necessary, but it could be. Okay, African American chefs have been in American kitchens since there were American kitchens. And yet, there seems to be a moment that is occurring now. I mean, Eduardo Jordan, Mashama Bailey, yourself, and a variety, Nina Compton, a variety of chefs have won Beard Awards, are out there in the public view. Just as the British would say, stick a pin for those of you who are here tomorrow night. The Iconoclast dinner is going to be held at the Farm Institute. There are 4 young black women chefs, among them one young lady who is among those 16. I think there's still tickets. Go. But saying that, the past few years have focused eyes on black chefs and, by extension, on chefs of color. Do you think it's a flavor of the month blip on the screen or a sign of a permanent paradigm shift?
I hope not for me. That would and if it was a flavor of the month, it wouldn't be good for the whole industry. I think people of color are just doing exciting things, and people are taking notice. But I think this is just the beginning, and with me and Eduardo and Mashama getting spotlight, it will inspire the next generation to take a stab at it.
Okay. Kith and Kin, your new spot in DC is basically a love song, a paean on high to your complex ancestry and your trajectory. Give us a hint of the menu and make us hungry.
So it's the menu is broken. So kith and kin means friends and family. So the menu is broken up into kith and kin. So kith is the friends section. It's where I get to be playful. You have dishes like a cucumber salad marinated in green seasoning with the gooseberry piri piri and puffed quinoa, and you have dishes like charred brassicas, which are any vegetable in the cabbage family, with seared scallops and we like to call it Nigesco sauce because it's like a Nigerian romesco. We use the red stew that I talked about earlier in place of tomatoes to make a romesco sauce. And we have uni escovitch. We take roti skin and we fry it until crispy, put avocado mousse, a lobster and crab salad, Hokkaido uni, and escovitch sauce from the Caribbean on there. And then the kin side is the family. It's the dishes I don't mess with. So you have a goosey stew with fufu. Goosey is like a melon seed that we cook with bitter leaf and dried crayfish, amongst other things, and serve it with fufu, which is a classification of a swallow. It's what helps us swallow our stews in West Africa, and it's made of pounded yam.
Which is not a sweet potato.
Yes, no, it's not. And we have jerk chicken and braised oxtails. So the menu is 4 pillars. It's of my background. It's Trinidadian, Jamaican, Nigerian, and Creole, with some of the diaspora sprinkled in between.
Okay, hope you're hungry. We're going to get to questions. I got one more question for him, and then we got you. With the recent past having been so rich and so varied, plans for the immediate future, where are you headed?
Working on the curriculum for the CIA and having more African food and foodways included into the program there. That's in my immediate future.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This is so rich. So now is the moment where you get to ask questions. So if anyone has questions, there are mics on either side. Please.
As a fan of Top Chef, what was it like competing? I mean, it looks so intense.
Yeah, it's more intense than it actually looks, because you just see us scrambling for ingredients, but on the other side, there's like 30 cameras in our faces. There's producers running around. They're like, Kwame, you want to ask Jim over there how his dish is going? And you gotta be like, hey, Jim, how's your dish going? So it's like while you're like cooking, and it's very distracting. And on top of that, you're sequestered. So you don't have a cell phone, you don't have internet, you don't have a TV, you can't listen to music, you can't read books. There's no distressors at all. And half the time you can't even speak. It's called being on ice. So they wait for you to build up all that emotion to go on camera and make good TV.
Wow.
Please, question on this side.
Hi, I want to ask about your book cover. In my publishing class, Miwa Messer from Barnes & Noble told us that Black men are rarely on the covers of their memoirs. So I was wondering if you could talk about that and talk about the process of designing.
One more time?
I was wondering if you could respond to that and then talk about the process of designing, of the design of your cover.
I don't know, it would be weird to have a white man on here with the Black chef, so I just thought it made sense for the title. But I actually struggled because I didn't want myself on the cover. I just wanted it to have the words, but they thought it would be good to have someone to identify. Even if no one knew who I was, it would be good to have a black man on the cover to go with the title, Black Chef. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I was touched by your comment about your mom making time for your family, and now that you're filling up your plate with a course at the CIA, a book tour, and running restaurants, how do you make time for your family?
I call them because I can't really see them often, but I just had my nieces in town for a week, and I took the whole week off and let them run around the restaurant. So I try to make time when I can. I just got a tattoo of my grandfather the other day, his first tattoo. It's really cool. So yeah, you just got to make time. Time is an illusion. So, you are in control of it.
Stretch it out. Last question. Is that a question? No, last question here. Last question there, please.
Hey, cool. My question, and you spoke to earlier about the culture in kitchens, the oppressive culture. I just want to talk about, or if you could talk about what steps you're taking in your kitchen to change that culture for future chefs coming into the world.
Just talking to my staff and getting to know them, I think, is the main thing. Communication is the building block of any good relationship. So if someone comes in late, it's not just writing them up because they're late. It's really trying to figure out why they're consistently late. If they're having an off day, pulling them to the side and saying what's going on, because they're usually a rock star. And it's just that communication. It's not just like cut and dry or black and white. It's more than that. It's building a relationship.
Do they still say yes, chef?
Yeah.
All right. Please.
So I just wanted to say I absolutely loved your book. And part of what really impressed me about it was the amazing honesty in it. And it's pretty unusual for anyone to be able to be that honest. And often it takes a lot of years to be able to look back and have that kind of honesty. And you're also an extraordinary storyteller. And so I was just wondering, where did that ability to be so honest and that ability to tell such a great story come from? Does that come from your grandfather, from your mother, from your family, or just from somewhere else?
I think it just came from a culmination of my life. Growing up where I come from, a lot of my friends aren't even here anymore. And I feel I've lived a long life because I can't even call them anymore to tell them, hey, guess what's going on right now? So you only have one life to live, and are you going to make something of it, or you're just going to bite your tongue the whole time? And I choose to just speak what's on my mind most of the time.
Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Okay, and that's a good place to end. Thank you all for coming. Notes from a young black chef. Kwame will be signing in the book signing tent. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. We'll see you later. Thank you very much. It was fabulous.
That was great.